So there are a number of things that we can talk about to end off today's show. And if there is anything big that happens later today, then we'll make a video about it and add on to the program. But even though there are conversations we can have about, like, Frank Saravalli's interview on Halford and Bruff earlier this morning, that got a lot of people upset, and it ruffled a lot of feathers, with some of the extra discourse about Elias Pettersson on the Vancouver Canucks, and how quote-unquote disappointing he has been since the Vancouver Canucks traded JT Miller away. But with all that in the background, I wanted to head over onto the Missin Curfew Podcast, because they had themselves an episode today, Shane O'Brien, Scotty Upshall, where they had, once again, Brad Richardson on as a guest. And if you remember, last time we had spoken about Brad Richardson and some comments that he had made on this podcast, it was in a video going over the real issues with Elias Pettersson and JT Miller. For me personally, I had to remind myself that, oh yeah, Brad Richardson played for the Vancouver Canucks in 2 stints. It's true that he was a part of a bottom 6 which featured the likes of Mike Santorelli and Sean Mathias and Ronnie Kennens back in the day, but his second stint in Vancouver, upon getting claimed by the Canucks from the Calgary Flames, was in the early 20s. He wasn't here for a long time, but he was here for a good time, and it's why Richardson had some insight as to what actually happened between Pettersson and Miller. Essentially, Richardson revealed that Miller was really, really hard on Pettersson, and he even had to tell JT, hey, you gotta step it back, you gotta back off from this guy, because if you keep dogging on this guy, you're gonna lose him, and he's not gonna be effective anymore. So even though the tough love, sorta in-your-face, blunt guidance style works for people like JT Miller, for example, it doesn't work with Petey, and Richardson revealed that on his appearance last time on the show. However, we have ourselves yet another episode of Missin Curfew, where the hosts talk about the Miller trade, where Richardson goes out there and reveals what he had told Patrik Allvin in regards to Miller, and I think this really does indicate what the Canucks' quote-unquote biggest mistake might have been in this situation. As always, this show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there, check out the first link in the description if you want to save some money in your VPN, get some free months, and help the channel out all in the process. But before we dive into Richardson's comments, I wanted to take a look at what the hosts in general had to say about the Miller trade. This clip was posted onto Twitter, and it talks about how the Canucks have taken a step backwards. JT Millers do not grow on trees. And essentially, what you're looking at is Upshall and O'Brien talking about how if they were Canucks fans, they'd be upset, and how JT is the guy that you can win with, and JT Millers don't grow on trees. There's a conversation about Allvin, since he's already traded Bo, and now he's traded JT. Essentially, the clip ends by talking about how Elias Pettersson, even though he is on a team like Vancouver that is quote-unquote soft, he needs to be the guy. Which is a sentiment that has been echoed a lot throughout this market. If there's a time to put up or shut up, now it's time for Pettersson to prove that he can be a number 1 guy. Unfortunately, in the 2 to 3 games without JT Miller so far, Pettersson hasn't looked like he's significantly improved. I mean, sure, he plays all right defensively, but then again, I mean, the guy's getting paid $11.6 million a year. Come on, Petey, I feel like we're just like Patrick Starr with that little stick poking the rock, trying to push him to go forward. But anyways, let's head over onto the Brad Richardson clip, wherein Richardson talks about how he told Patrik Allvin in his exit meeting with the Canucks to surround JT Miller with veteran players to get the most out of him. Here's the text as to what Richardson says, courtesy of the AI transcribing machine. Richardson says this: "What I think they messed up on, and I told Patrik Allvin this in my exit meeting, and I'd only been there a short time, but I knew my career was over, and I was just going to tell this guy honestly, and I love JT Miller. Great guy. I'd take him on my team. But I told Allvin, you gotta surround a guy like JT Miller with veteran players, or you're gonna be effed. That's how you calm JT Miller down. You've got to have a veteran group that knows how to settle him down at the right times when he gets a little off the rails, because he does. But if you get him to dial in, he's an unbelievable player and he's a great guy. But he needs veteran guys around him, or it gets squirrely." Shane O'Brien then replies saying, just looking at it from an ex-player, an alumni, like, maybe if there was more veteran guys in there, you know, like, Brock Besser is not a talkative guy. I don't know Jake DeBrusk, but he doesn't seem like the guy to say a whole lot. you look at their back end, Tyler Myers, I don't know if he's a vocal guy or who would say something, so I think Richie's right. Richardson then says once more, I've played with some of these guys. Like, the best leader up front on their team is Conor Garland. I've played with him on 2 different teams. He's a great leader, he's a small guy, he plays right every night, he's their best leader up front, and that I know. And then he kind of stutters a little bit, and he, that's what I'm telling you. Like, there's not a lot of, there's no Patrick Maroons or Corey Perrys or guys that have been around a long time to really settle the room down. Obviously, Brad Richardson is not going to go out there and talk smack about Conor Garland after saying all this praise about the guy, but you could fill in the blanks here. Conor Garland, while he is a great leader in the room, while he is a vocal locker room presence, he's a smaller guy who doesn't have that same longevity in the NHL or that veteran leadership like, let's just name some of the other guys in the past. Luke Schenn, Chris Tanev, heck, Tanner Pearson even, Ian Cole, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Alex Chiasson. Some of these guys weren't great. I'm not going to defend their on-ice play. But these guys were veteran leadership guys, some of whom were captains on other teams, like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. When Brad Richardson goes out there and tells Patrik Allvin in his exit interview that you have to surround JT Miller with veteran guys or else that guy could get out of control, this is what he was talking about. In the 24-25 season, we already heard the comments made by Tyler Myers. JT Miller on this locker room had the most weight or presence than anybody Myers has ever played with before. And you think about it like, okay, Quinn Hughes, he's a leader, he's a top-tier guy to interview, he's a fantastic hockey player, but he's a young guy. Like, Pettersson, also a young guy, he's not talkative, he's not really captain material, he's not in the same mold as a Henrik Sedin. Conor Garland having that leadership presence, yes, that's good, but he's also relatively young compared to some of the other names that have been tossed out there in Vancouver Canucks history. Luke Schenn and JT Miller got into it, and guess what? It was Conor Garland who broke that up. But the fact is, Luke Schenn can go out there and combat against JT when things get a little bit rocky. Just as an outsider, this is the sort of dynamic where if you have a bunch of veteran guys that can keep your top dog hothead in check, then it's kind of like a pacifier for the rest of the locker room, for the rest of the team, because if JT doesn't have any veteran guys around him to calm him down or to settle him back or rein him in, then he's just going to run with it, and it might get to a pretty bad spot like it seems to have done with the Pettersson-Miller feud from this year. So Patrik Allvin, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, this was like fuel to bring back Oliver Ekman-Larsson or something, but maybe at the very least to re-sign Ian Cole, something like that. Maybe keep a vocal guy like a Zadorov in the locker room. Maybe it was sort of a mistake to let go of a Luke Schenn type of asset. Surrounding these players and this former core with veteran talents like that, seems like Brad Richardson told Allvin about it, and it worked for last season. But this year, the dynamic was all screwed up because of it. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this idea, Richardson speaking out about the problem, the quote-unquote what went wrong with JT in Vancouver. I want to get some opinions out there. Do you think there's merit to this overarching thought? Do you think a bigger veteran leadership presence in the locker room would have fixed this situation? We have heard the tea leaves from guys like Rick Dhaliwal. Hey, if Chris Tanev was in this locker room, this rift wouldn't have gotten as bad. We had Bruce Boudreau say on, I think it was Overdrive, that Tanner Pearson was one of the players that was able to conduit a positive connection between Miller and Pettersson because Pearson's name, Pettersson, he's right there beside PD in the locker room. And he's a really good friend with Miller. So the fact that they're able to connect through Pearson, to understand each other through Pearson, he's kind of like a filter for all the primary thoughts that both of those guys have. Hey, that was great. Maybe Bo Horvat, when he was in the room, he was able to stabilize things. He learned from the best in Henrik Sedin. Veteran leadership guys. I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments if the Canucks made a mistake by not surrounding the rest of the team with these players heading into this season, and if the JT Miller situation got exacerbated because of this aspect of the team construction. Thoughts in the comment section below. I'm going to leave a link in the description to the specific video clips that we referred to, the Shane O'Brien talking about how JT Millers don't grow on trees clip, as well as the Richardson clip. Check out ExpressVPN. You could save some money and help out the channel too. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.